your particular area of expertise now. The picture people can see behind us here is, just explain to us, this is one of your images. Where was this? What was going on?
That photograph was taken just a couple of weeks ago on the River Irwell. The waters of the Irwell flow past your studios here in Salford. That's at Bolton Wastewater Treatment Works, very exotic site. But what you can see there are basically thousands and thousands of sewage-marinated wet wipes that have been discharged from the wastewater treatment works.
It actually takes a moment, for when you look at the picture, and I hope people can see it OK at home, to kind of... You start looking closely and you can absolutely see what you're talking about.
Well, you think it's the bark of the tree, don't you? But it's
actually
all of it stripped together and just hanging.
And at that site, the vegetation there is basically full of wet wipes that have been dumped from the wastewater treatment works.
OK.
Look, we've had 52 warnings from the Environment Agency. We have spoken to water companies, utility companies on this programme. We have shown people how filthy the waterways are. What do you need to see done now, today?
Three things. We need to fully fund the Environment Agency. Their budgets have been slashed. You know, the Environment Agency over the last decade has basically lost the capacity to monitor what the water companies are doing. I think in 2010 their monitoring budget was about 120 million. It's been cut down to 40 million. So we need to fully fund the Environment Agency. I would argue that fully funding the Environment Agency is just as important as funding the NHS.
What difference would that make?
Well, the Environment Agency has lots of dedicated professionals, but they're frustrated because they don't have the resources to monitor what's happening in our rivers.
OK, but that's after the event, isn't it? I mean, that's when it's already happened.
Absolutely, but it's critical that we do the monitoring so that we can measure improvement and we can understand what the impact pollution from water companies is having on our rivers.
How do you stop it now? What are the other two things?
Well, at the moment, any other industry that dumps toxic waste in the environment, the CEOs would go to prison. They'd be fined. So we need to take away the incentive of polluting our rivers, because it's still baked in to water company behaviour. It's still an incredibly profitable activity, dumping untreated sewage in rivers. So Theresa Coffey talks about fines, but we need to start implementing some of those fines and creating a deterrent to stop that practice.
Professor, I don't know how widespread you look. I mean, is there a model of a country or a place that is getting it right? I mean, we're watching what's happening in the UK because we care about what happens here. But is everywhere having the same issues?
There are water quality and pollution issues in lots of countries, but I think in England at the moment, in particular, there's public outrage about this because people are making huge profits on the back of environmental degradation.
But where do we look to see a place that's doing it better?
Let's look at France, for example. France has hundreds and hundreds of river sites where the water quality is good enough for bathing. In England at the moment, we have about 2. And for the Olympics in Paris, they're cleaning up the River Seine so people will be able to swim in the River Seine for the first time in decades. So there are lots of good examples that we can look at for good practice. I mean, that site at Bolton, the outrage is that untreated sewage was dumped there 1,845 hours last year. And so that's, over the year, that's 5 hours per day. And it's become routine on rivers across England.
Just regarding that site, there's United Utilities. We obviously would have got a right to reply statement from them. And they say they're committed to tackling the issue, planning the biggest environment improvement products in the programme in the UK to meet new requirements of the Environment Act. In Bolton specifically, action is being taken with a £100 million project to improve the quality of the treated water which leaves the site and reduce overflow operations. We've also secured accelerated funding, which will target further improvements on the River Irwell. When do we see evidence of that?
Well, all new investment is welcome. And what's encouraging about this, in a sense, is that campaigning is working.
So do you think they're getting the message? Do you think the companies are getting the message?
I think they're getting the message, but they're in panic mode at the moment. They're having to accelerate investment because people like me and campaigners are shining a light on poor practice, and I make no apologies for that.
That's good if they're in panic mode and doing something, isn't it?
Absolutely, but obviously the financial structures of the water companies are quite opaque. Some of them are struggling to raise the revenue to invest in the infrastructure that's needed. And what we see there, that image there, once you lift the bonnet on the water companies and look underneath, their environmental records are appalling. And we've had systemic degradation of river environments and coastal environments across Britain, particularly over the last decade. And it's really important that we turn that around.
Professor, really interesting hearing that. Professor Jamie Woodward from the University of Manchester, thank you very much.